Hello, Tom Barnett here again with another story behind the illustration. Here one that takes the reader to that transformed north, previously only suggested by the preceding thread called Poleward Bound. The final image here was not anywhere near where my head originally was on this one, and yet I think it works far better than what I was reaching for at first. When I started researching this concept of the New North, I had as my guide geographer Lawrence Smith of academia. His book, which came out in 2011, was originally called The World in 2050. In later editions, it was called The New North, a much better title. The book is an excellent read, very Jared Diamond-like, which is why he got his endorsement on the cover, which is pretty sweet. The one image from the book that really captured my imagination was this notion of this vast circumpolar climb known as the taiga, and full of old boreal forests actually being put on the move by climate change. Every year, the treeless tundra to the north is encroached upon by the advancing taiga forest. And every year, a bit more taiga along the climb's southern edge succumbs to more temperate forests and eventually to grasslands. So in effect, the taiga, this vast old forest, is kind of marching northward over time, revealing in its wake far more livable and even arable land for the planting and harvesting of cereal crops. Amazing stuff, am I right? Well, I was hoping to capture that sort of amazing image. Being a big fan of the Lord of the Rings books, my first thought was to portray these ent-like tree creatures simply marching northward. But then, of course, I came to the conclusion that that was too specific a reference, bordering on the cute, when the subject at hand is more profound than that. So that dream was shelved, and I found another place later in the book to indulge in my Lord of the Rings love. Instead, Jim Nuttall went with a more accessible image, the polar bear bearing witness to all this change. The polar bear, of course, being a poster child for the whole climate change movement, seeking to portray the damage being done in the Arctic environment. Note, our image, our presentation of the polar bear doesn't buy into the claim that polar bears are going extinct due to climate change, because that simply isn't true. So we went with the classic image, but skipped the apocryphal victim concept here. Instead, as I said before, our polar bear is there to witness the New North's stunning transformation. No norms applied. Expanding the image to a wider angle, you get a much better sense of the breadth of this transformation, something we sought to convey with a lot of smaller, embedded imagery. You get a sense of those images here in the review copy, which passed with no suggestions from our red team reviewers. So the potential for extracting hydrocarbons, a quarter of the world's reserves, represented by the offshore oil rig, the expanded opportunity for transpolar shipping, finally, along the far shore, a sense of settlements being established and expanded, marked by national flags that suggest a bit of a polar rush going on, perhaps slipping into open military competition. Thus, in sum, there's a lot going on, and great uncertainty as to how it all plays out. We're amazed, the polar bear is amazed. You get the idea. Which brings us to the final book version. Again, it's not where my head was originally. And again, I got my Lord of the Rings itch scratched elsewhere in the book, particularly in my use of the Middle Earth concept. But a solid, comprehensive capture of a transforming region. And that was the goal of this thread, achieved visually. And that's the story behind this illustration. As always, we love it when people buy the book, when they recommend the book, when they praise the book online. I and my Throughline colleagues, we feel very passionate about this work. Please consider subscribing to my Substack newsletter. And see you next time, next illustration.